So we've done Haruhi, and now we're going to look at Yuki. Now, I'm only going to be making the jacket because my friend who's actually going to be cosplaying her is going to be making the rest. So, considering the jacket, once again I have the figurine as reference, and also a variety of printouts, ignore the Haruhi. So, we've got some good ideas of what Yuki's jacket should look like. So, from these two references, it would appear to be a really bright red, and also the figurine would confirm that. Now, the figurine, the texture of the material is often really difficult to tell in anime, because with cell shading it's difficult to convey texture unless it's really detailed. And from looking at the buyable version and cosplay versions, the preferred material tends to be either pleather, which is fake leather and therefore a lot cheaper, or PVC. Now, what we're going to be using is PVC. It's got that really nice, shiny, bright texture, and it's also really flexible. It's kind of hard to work with at times, but we'll get onto that later. But you could do it out of pleather, but the thing about pleather is that it's quite a lot thicker, and that you probably wouldn't be able to move quite as much, and it doesn't have the same shine. It definitely has a sheen to it, but not the same amount of shine. So, it really does depend on what you really feel you'd be comfortable wearing, or what you really want to make it out of. Normally, when making a jacket, I'd refer to this pattern. Simplicity again, I find they're the easiest to use. 3, 6, 2, 8. And there's like a variety of different colours that you can see on the front. And just to give you an example of how you can modify a pattern to anything you need, I've got 3 different jackets here. The first one is Yuki from Vampire Nights, just to prove that you can actually make it rather than having to buy it, complete with jewel embellishments and rose buttons, even if the camera won't focus. And you've got the Haruhi Day of Sagittarius uniform, and also the Code Geass Ashford uniform, all made from the same pattern, with slightly modified collars or cuffs. If you'll notice, the collar, although standing up on Yuki's jacket, is actually more of a blazer collar, or a regular suit collar. So as you can see from these jackets and from the pattern cover, it doesn't cover that type of collar. So I had to refer to a different pattern. Simplicity again, 3, 7, 3, 8. And as you can see, there's a nice cropped jacket there, which is perfect for Yuki. All you need to do is lengthen the sleeves, and we're going to go through that now. Here's some basics on how to use pattern instructions. First of all, you get a brief overview of all the aspects that this pattern covers. So we're going to be looking at part E, which is the jacket. So then you refer to this page, which will give you all the patterns by number and what they relate to. So just in case it won't focus, you've got front E, yoke back E, upper collar E, under collar E, front facing E, and sleeve E. So what you would then do is you would cut out those pattern pieces, which come on really big sheets of tissue paper, so you've got to be careful not to rip them. And they usually come with different sizes. This is a 14 to 22, and you can get 6 to 12 versions, and it can vary between patterns. So you'd cut those out, and it also shows you cutting layouts. Now you can get various layouts because different materials come in different widths. Now we're using a very wide material, and we're making piece number E. So we have to change the page. E jacket, here we go. And so here you have how to lay out the pieces so you get least amount of wastage and max amount of use. Here we have our red PVC ready to lay pattern pieces on. Now, something to bear in mind about PVC is that it will stick to itself, but don't worry, because normally when you're sewing good side to good side, and this is what's known as the good side, aka the side that's going to be on the outside. And on the other side, you've got this, which the sewing machine can easily grip onto and will slide through the sewing machine, making this a very easy fabric to work with. Another thing that it's really good for is boot covers, because it's very sturdy and comes in a lot of colours, and I'm pretty sure you could get away with painting the white. So now we're going to lay on the pattern pieces. There are two ways of initially cutting out pattern pieces. either you can cut exactly around the lines as shown here, or you can cut around the pattern as shown here. And when you pin it, you can trim the excess away when you officially start cutting the material. Now, if you ever come to do this yourself and use the same pattern I have, you'll notice that I've laid it out a little differently. And that's because of the sleeve. Now, normally the sleeve would be over there in the corner and everything will be a bit more compact. But because I want the sleeve to be a long sleeve and this pattern is only a 3/4 sleeve, I'm going to need to extend it about double what it is now. Now, if you're going to end up using material not all in one area but continuing on down, then what you've got to try and do is use it on the side that doesn't have the fold. You see how this is an open end, and this is where the material is folded over on itself. And a lot of pattern pieces will have this side, which means cut on the fold. In Simplicity Patterns it says center fold on it, and there's some really good instructions provided on how to use it. So with the arm, because I'm going to extend it, it's on the side that isn't on the fold, because that way, when I've finished cutting out, I'm going to have the large piece over there, where you'll fold it out and you'll have double what's left, rather than if I cut it on this side, where I would only have the 2 halves. Now the thing with pinning is you can never pin too much, only too little. Because this fabric doesn't tend to move so much because it's quite sticky and it holds to the floor and you don't need to worry about it moving so much, so when you're cutting it, it also won't move so much. So you've got a couple of inches between the pins. However, if you're going to work with a fabric like a chiffon or a satin where it's really slippery and it moves a lot, then the more pins you have, the easier it's going to be to cut it out. Because the last thing you want is the fabric slipping under the pattern and you ending up with 2 pieces that are completely different. You'll also notice that I haven't yet pinned the sleeve, and that's because I just don't have the space to have it all out to the length I would need for the sleeve. So you can do things in stages. You can cut out bits and pieces and then spread the material back out. Now something else is that this material, the paper is like tissue paper, so it's really delicate. So if you do end up accidentally ripping it, like here, don't panic. That's the important thing, because you can just fix it up with some tape and be sure to tape both sides, and it's still perfectly usable. A few things to note when you're actually cutting out the pattern is these triangular marks. Now, what these are a way of making the pattern easier to use for lining up the pieces when you're sewing them together. Like, for instance, this is the back, and it's only half of the back, and that's because of the way the pattern is, but see these notches? This is going to be the sleeve hold. And so if you look on the sleeve itself, you'll see that there's a matching triangle point. 2 triangles actually, it's over here. And so that's to help you match up where they're supposed to sit. And now you have 2 options when you're doing these. You can either do the option of actually cutting out the triangle when you're doing the cutting out, or you can mark it on in pencil later. Now the difference between sewing and tailoring is that sewing is you get your pattern, you cut out your pieces, you stitch them together, and voila, magically you've made a garment. However, tailoring is when, for example, lengthening a sleeve, or taking in a jacket, or just making it fit better, or, you know, mixing pieces of a pattern together to make something completely new. Now, with this example, if you're going to look to lengthen something, normally in a pattern there will be a lengthening line. That's not in this sleeve because you can just extend down, but sometimes there'll be lines in the middle because it's a way of maintaining shape, and you'll just have to cross that bridge when you come to it. You've got one of 2 options. You can either do it using paper and actually cut out the paper and make a full new pattern piece, or you can do what I'm doing, which is just going to be to draw straight onto the material, because all I'm doing is lengthening it by a rectangle. I don't see the need to waste the paper. I'm using what we've come to refer to as the plank, which is just an old bit of wood, but you know, meter ruler, anything long and straight will do. Now once you've cut out all the pieces, you're going to be left with a multitude of selvages still attached to the main bulk of your material. Now normally I personally would just cut these off unless there was like particularly big pieces like over there, which could be useful later. Or there might be some small details on the jacket or whatever garment you're making that these could be useful for. For example, I don't know if you can see it, But there is in fact some small detailing here on Yuki's jacket, and it's on both sides, and so we can probably use this leftover material here to make the strips for it. Now if you're not going to cut notches outside of the material where the triangles indicate, and you want to mark it with pencil, be sure to mark it on the inside, on the wrong side of the material. If you don't know what that is, ask somebody with more experience. This is to stop it from, if say you did mark it on the outside and you stitched it, there may still be leftover marks, and you don't want that. It'll spoil your cosplay.